Two best friends embark on a hike, capturing moments on Snapchat. One of those moments, a video of a man following them. The next day, they're found murdered. This is the chilling case of the Delphi Murders.
Buckle up. You're listening to Voltage and Villains.
What's up, guys? Welcome back to Voltage and Villains. I'm Moira.
I'm Phoenix.
And today we're going to be covering the Delphi Murders, the Snapchat killer, the case of Libby German and Abby Williams, also known as Liberty German and Abigail Williams. On February 13th, 2017, two best friends, 13-year-old Abigail Williams and 14-year-old Liberty German, set out to hike on the Monon High Bridge Trail in Delphi, Indiana. It used to be a place where people didn't lock their doors, stated the Carroll County Sheriff.
I hate that phrase. You know how I feel about that phrase.
Yeah.
And like we've covered another case in which, like the April Millsap case,
Yep,
where that same phrase came up. This
right.
This was a place where you don't have to lock your doors. I feel like you lock your doors. There's a lock on your door for a reason. You have a door for a reason.
Right.
I don't even understand how the thought of not locking a door would come up.
So the town of Delphi is known to be like really small as like a high school. Like it's that small.
But what does that mean? Like even in high school, all right, my last thing, and then I'll let you finish, is even in high school, you put locks on your locker, right?
Right.
Okay. Rest my case.
He said point blank period.
Point blank period.
I don't blame you. And it's true. You're supposed to, those things are there for a reason. The girls were enjoying a day off from school, exploring the scenic trail. They were dropped off around 1:35 p.m. and around 2 p.m., Libby posted a photo of the bridge on Snapchat and one of Abby, her friend, walking across the historic bridge. The Snapchat post was the last correspondence from either of them. Hours passed and nobody could get in contact with the girls. They were supposed to be picked up by Libby's dad around 3 p.m. They never showed up, and the police began searching for them around 5:30 p.m. They searched through the night with a ton of volunteers. So it became like a really big thing in the town of like, hey, we need volunteers to look for these girls because it's such a small town. It's kind of like word goes fast.
And it just went completely. Was that park like really big? I'm assuming it's like really big.
It's like a historic trail that it's a trail. We've been to trails before where you walk around. It's a route that you go through.
Yeah.
And then,
but
you end up in
but I mean, like
parts of town.
the park that the trail is in, it must be huge. Because we've also been to really small trails where like, if theoretically somebody went missing in the trail, like you'd if they were still there, you'd be able to find them within like 2 hours.
That's true, but you also got to remember the trail is part of the town, so there's parts of the trail
that lead off into towns,
into different
and
parts of
backyards
the town and different
gosh.
parts of the backyard, and we'll cover a part of that later. You'll see. People began to theorize that they might have fallen off a bridge, like off that bridge that they took a picture, and people say, hey, maybe one of them fell off the bridge and the other one followed and ended up falling too. Or a lot of people were like, the cops were saying, hey, maybe they just ran away. And the search ended up halting for the night because it was too late. The next day, February 14th, police found two bodies. They did not identify the bodies, but the bodies were a mile east of the town. A few hours later, they actually identified the bodies. But the town knew like, hey, it's them. Because the town is so small, people don't really go missing like that. So
yeah, no one else is really missing besides these two girls, and it's two girls.
And it's two girls, right? You found two bodies. So people were like, yeah, it's them.
The condition of these bodies must have not been normal though.
Oh, no, it wasn't. So their bodies were found next to a creek called Deer Creek. Libby had her throat cut, and it was believed that she was dragged by her arm to the spot where her body was found in. Abby also had her throat cut, but her hands suggest that she was restrained or unconscious when she died. Abby was believed to have died on the same spot she was found in.
And they found this still on the trail, huh?
They found it off the trail. So they found it right off the trail, right after the bridge that they were in the photos.
So not far from where the photos were taken.
Not far from where the photos were taken.
Okay.
So on February 15th, the police released a picture of a man on the same bridge that Abby and Libby were walking through. No one knew where the picture came from. But later we found out that the picture came from Libby's phone. Libby had recorded him while they were walking through the trail. And part of the footage that Libby recorded was you heard the man telling them to go down the hill. You don't really see him The only thing you see before you hear the voice is the guy walking behind them. Then you see them kind of being like, is he still there? Between each other, like very like low-key whispery. And then you hear them like kind of like going down, like kind of like exploring, trying to like get away from him. And then next thing you know is you hear him saying, go down the hill. It's very creepy because that's all the information that came out for the case for a long time. This happened in 2017. In July 2017, the police released a composite sketch where they described him to be between 5'6" and 5'10", between 180 to 220 pounds, with reddish or brownish hair.
Then that was it.
That was it. Only thing we know is that Libby's friends were kind of like trying to figure out who this man was because they knew that Libby was kind of like on the internet talking to people, like random people. You know how sometimes you go on Omegle and you like talk to random people, kind of like that. So that was the last thing we heard of any news or any descriptions coming out for any sort of suspects from this case up until 2019. In 2019,
2 years of nothingness.
2 years.
Oh,
2 years.
man.
The case kind of like just stalled.
I hate to hear shit like that.
Yeah.
Because like the whole time the family is like
trying to figure out who the hell it was.
Like, all right, I know this is gonna sound like a little bit of like a joke, but it's not. I promise it's not. Like, that's the type of shit where like I'd have to turn to Batman.
Oh yeah.
Or like a fucking vigilante. Like I'm gonna go out there and try to solve this shit myself.
But that's why like families take matters into their own hands because they're like, look, like if we just let these cops do whatever they want to do, like they're not gonna find anything. And it's not because they might not want to.
It's because they're busy.
Because they're just
they need sign-offs. There's a whole bunch of other cases going on.
Right. And it makes sense. But nothing was released up until 2019. And they released the other part of the audio from that video that Libby took.
Wait. So the damn case goes cold.
Yes.
And you guys don't release the rest of the audio? Mm-hmm. This is what I'm talking about.
But I believe when I read through the case, they said that they had to kind of like put the video through filters to get the guy's voice to sound more clearer.
Okay.
That's why they kind of like got the first part because he was really close, but that's why they got the second part like quickly because he was closer to them. But the first part they had to kind of like get a filter and kind of like edited it to hear it. And the first part was him addressing them as guys. So he said guys down the hill.
And I'm not gonna lie, like the technology with that type of stuff really between 2017 and 2019 did start to upgrade. Yeah, because we were dealing with like audio stuff back then. So like,
Exactly.
But yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry.
So no, go ahead.
No. I was gonna respond to what you just last said, which was
guys.
He referred to them as guys, but I feel like that's just a normal thing for people to say. I wouldn't put too much emphasis on that.
Yeah, but we kind of know that he was talking to both of them. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Like it emphasizes that he was there present in the moment. He knew he was following them and he kind of was targeting them.
Yeah. Okay.
Police also released a sketch of a younger suspect, and they said that the suspect could be as young as 16. So now the age range kind of widened. It was like the suspect could be anywhere between 16 years old and 40-something years old, and that's a huge gap. It's a very big gap. Police knew that the suspect was most likely a citizen living amongst them and addressed that in the same press conference that they released the audio and the new composite sketch. But after looking, they still could not pin anyone. So this is 2 years later and you still can't find who really did this. Fast forward to November 2022.
Oh my God.
So it's what, 4 or 5 years?
5 years.
Right.
Almost 6.
So police had many suspects. They interviewed them. They brought them into the police station. They tried to, see if they were. One of the main suspects was a guy named Ron Logan. He was a suspect because their bodies were found on his property. His property is really close to the Monon Bridge, the Monon High Bridge where they were walking. So he was acting very suspicious during their killings. During the time that they died, he would go out to the police. He would go out to like the news reporters, and he would give them interviews. He would give them tours of where they died, of where the girls died. He'd also give the reporters an alibi as to where he was when they died. But it really turns out that the guy was lying about a lot of the stuff. So within the time of, the police looking at him as a suspect, the police got 2 search warrants for his house and just overall looking into him. One of the search warrants was looking for guns because on the crime scene, they found the bodies of the girls that were covered with branches and one single bullet that was not used. It's kind of like they said it was unused and it was unfired and it kind of fell off of the gun. So they were looking for that gun that would fit that bullet. So that's why they got a search warrant for Ron Logan's house.
Unused bullet at the crime scene.
Yep.
Okay.
It was like scratched as if like it had kind of like fallen off or misfired or something like that. So that's what they kept looking for. They kept looking for that gun. So the cops, the investigators had a search warrant for guns for Ron Logan's property, and they found 156 guns in his property.
Damn.
The second search warrant was more of like a search warrant because he was a probable suspect. So the FBI had written on it that they believe he is responsible for the murders based on how he was acting. The most compelling reason, like I mentioned before, as to why the authorities believed that he committed the crime, but also like how he, like the reasons why he was acting like very suspicious, was because one, he had constructed an alibi for the crime that had not even been fully investigated yet. So like the girls' bodies were found and he was already on the news speculating. Like, yeah, like they died, like, oh, or this probably happened to them. Mind you, nothing, like the cops hadn't even finished investigating. Like nothing was going on. He was. But
was he right about what he was speculating? Some of the things that he was speculating on, was he correct?
Not really. He was, but he wasn't, and the cops didn't know that at the time. The cops had no clue.
No, I'm saying like eventually when they figured out that he was out there talking, did they figure that he was right in some of the things he was saying, and then that's what made them go, he's a suspect because he was saying this shit before we even knew?
No.
Or no, they was just wondering, why the hell are you talking so much?
Why the hell are you talking so much?
Okay, I got you.
The other reason why he was believed to be like a prime suspect was because he lied about his alibi of leaving his house to go buy tropical fish. So that was the excuse he was giving the news reporters. I left my house. I wasn't there. I left my house to go buy tropical fish. But he lied about the time that he left the house. Third reason was that he had a suspended license. So he was just driving.
So he wasn't even supposed to be driving?
He wasn't even supposed to be driving.
Why the hell would he lie about driving when you're not even supposed to be driving?
Right. So that's why the police were like, you're acting very suspicious.
Maybe he didn't even know that he had a suspended license, right? Because that happens to people sometimes.
Right. No, but he knew.
So he
knew because in the end he ended up pleading guilty and ended up like admitting to like, hey, like I was driving with my suspended license.
I mean, that doesn't mean that you knew though. It just means that you were guilty of doing it.
That's true. But he also did lie about his alibi, about where he was.
Why the hell was he lying about that? You know what it is? Maybe he saw something and he just was like, damn, I'm an accessory by seeing it and then not saying anything.
Probably. Yeah. We're going to get into that part of it later because in 2021, so a little bit before they started fully, investigating Ron, the police had uncovered an online profile named Anthony Shots. It was a fictitious account that was using the pictures of a known model who portrayed himself as rich, meaning he had many cars, he had a lot of money. The person who ran the fictitious account used the profile to talk to young girls and request nude pictures. They found out that Libby and Anthony were online friends, and he often liked and commented on her posts. Later, due to a lot of investigation, the cops found out that this online fictitious account was run by a man named Keegan Klein. Keegan admitted to having the account, and even police believed that he had something to do with the murders of Libby and Abby because he was connected to them. He had talked to Abby online, things like that. But
how old is this guy?
He completely denied it.
He's not a minor like
He's
that.
not a minor. He's probably he was well into his mid to late 20s.
Okay.
So he gave the police everything they wanted. He was questioned by news, by some reporters later on, and he said, I gave the police everything they wanted. I didn't do it. And I believe I didn't talk to Abby the day that she disappeared. Meaning I kind of had nothing to do with it. You can't look at me and say that I did it because I have nothing to do with that. Then in October 2022, police held a press conference to announce the arrest of Richard M. Allen. This is 5 years after the crime even started.
Yeah.
The arrest was really random to the public. They were very confused as to one, who this man is, why they're arresting him, and what evidence they have to arrest him. They were super confused. And also, the police did not share a lot of details as to why they arrested him at the press conference. They just said, we have our suspect. We have arrested somebody. Richard had no history of doing any sort of crime. He worked at a CVS pharmacy as a pharmacy tech for many years. He was known amongst the community as a polite, outstanding man who cares for the community, who cares for everybody, and he's out of the way.
Okay.
He has had a wife. At that point, they were married for 30 years. He had a daughter as well. So people were very confused as to what's going on. Even when people from his old town were interviewed where he grew up, they remembered him as someone who was polite, someone who was kind, someone who really wasn't like trouble. You know what I mean? So that's why people were even more confused. Apparently, he had even helped Libby's aunt print pictures for Libby after she passed away at the CVS. So Libby's aunt went to the CVS, was trying to print pictures, and he was there helping her. Libby's aunt said that he was very polite and very kind. So Richard is arrested. Everything is kind of like on lockdown. Police are not releasing much information. But around this time, the same sheriff who said that this was we don't lock our doors type of town, he asked the court to move Richard from the jail where they were holding him to like a larger prison for safeties, for security reasons. The judge signed off, and then the judge stepped off the case. The judge stated something about how he didn't feel right about taking the case, which was very odd.
What the hell is going on? What's going on? Okay, I think they know for a fact it's him, but it's because they have a whole bunch of other evidence of him like molesting or doing something to other kids. And the only reason that I'm guessing that, before you tell me what it really is that normally they don't want to have you in like just a regular jail holding cell around too much people. Yeah. Because in jail you'll get seriously harmed if they find out you did anything to kids.
You did something to kids. Yeah. Yes. So who knows? That was probably it. They never stated as to why they moved him. It was kind of like just a hush hush type of thing.
So it was like, move him. They moved him then sign off. And then the judge was like, all right, I don't feel comfortable doing this case no more.
Yep.
I'm out.
Yep.
What the heck?
Yep. Allen, Richard, which we're going to refer to as Allen from now on. Allen was moved to a high security state prison. Indiana Supreme Court ended up stepping in and appointed a judge named Francis Gold to the case. Richard was held in custody without bond.
So they really think this motherfucker is him.
Yeah, they really think it's him.
Or they really know it's him, and they're just like, look, prison starts now. Right. Like, don't even think about anything else.
Right. Yeah. Who knows? Like, we don't know, again, as to why they signed off, but we just know, like, he was just moved.
No. I'm not even talking about the move. I'm talking about no bond, move, everything. Yeah. Yo, for you, prison starts now.
Right.
Yeah.
So a month after his arrest, he wrote a handwritten letter asking for help to the judge, saying that he needed counsel. So at first, Allen had said, hey, I'm going to work on finding my own counsel. But then as he later found out while trying to find counsel that it was going to cost a lot for a trial like this. It was going to cost a pretty penny. So he had to write a letter asking for help. The judge had appointed 2 private defenders. The 2 defenders were named Baldwin and Rosie. The lawyers, once they, became his defenders, the lawyers released a statement saying that he was innocent. The probable cause of affidavit was released. So this is essentially like why he was arrested. So we finally get this information as to why he was arrested a month after he's arrested. The first reason was because evidence showed that the girls were dropped off at the trails at 1:49 p.m. The video of Libby recording the video of the man on the trail happened at 2:13 p.m., which is 24 minutes after they were dropped off. In one of the videos, you hear one of the girls saying gun. There was also, like I mentioned before, an unfired .40 caliber round found 2 feet away from their bodies at the crime scene. A state trooper had given his opinion, and the state trooper believed that the gun they recovered at Alan's home when they did like a search,
Yeah.
That the gun was a match to the unfired round.
Okay.
Also, 4 witnesses had been revealed on the affidavit, and they said they saw a man who matched the description of the guy on Libby's video between 1:26 p.m. and 2:13 p.m. So around the same time that Libby recorded the video and was there, 4 witnesses, 3 teens and 1 woman, saw the same guy. One of the witnesses is seen arriving to the park at 1:46 p.m. So this was all seen on footage, I guess from the town security system. She parked her car and walked towards the bridge. She said she had seen a man standing 50 feet away from her on the bridge, so she decided to walk back in the direction that she came from. As she's walking back to the direction she came from, she sees 2 girls walking towards the bridge. She believed those 2 girls were Abby and Libby. And to tie it all together, the other witness was driving north of the trails about 2 hours after the abduction had happened, and she said she saw a man in a blue jacket walking the opposite direction, and he was muddy and bloody. And she describes it as like he had killed a pig. So before his arrest in October 2022, Alan admitted that he was on the trail that same day. He admitted that he was wearing a blue jacket and blue pants and maybe a hat between the time of 1:30 and 3 p.m. And he claims that he was watching fish.
He was washing fish?
No, watching. Like
he was watching
fish.
fish?
That's what he claims he was doing.
Okay.
So 8 months after his arrest, more documents are released. It is stated that he admitted to killing Libby and Abby several times. On the phone, to his wife, to his mom, multiple times. He admitted to his wife via a jail phone call. So he told his wife, hey, something I have to tell you. And she asked him, are you sure you want to tell me here right now? He said, yeah, I'm sure because I'm probably going to spend the rest of my life in here. And then he said, I did it.
And that's on record. That's a recorded jail call.
Yes.
Wow.
Yes.
Okay.
The defense released a statement, which is Alan's team, between, I guess, late 2022 and early 2023. They released a statement saying that he was innocent. They filed the claim.
But what about what he said on the phone?
Oh, hold on. We're not done yet. They filed the statement claiming that it was a religious cult that was following Odinism, saying that the girls were a sacrifice. This religious cult is a very, not well known, but it's a very followed cult in those parts of town, like Midwest, South, where they kind of like just kill people. They're kind of like linked to white supremacy, but like not fully. They say they're not like on the racist, but they kind of are. Like it was like some expert about cults that kind of like spoke on them, and he said that they follow this specific religion that kind of dates back to like sacrifices and killing people. The defense had said this because of the way that the bodies were found. The bodies were found laying there, but they also had branches on them. So the defense kind of stated like, hey, like the branches were symbolisms of this Odinism religious cult. They also said that there were tree markings near where the girls' bodies were found, but there's been no physical photograph evidence to show that what they're saying is true. So kind of like the judge.
So it just sounds like they're trying to muddy up the waters a little bit.
Yeah.
Create doubt, because you don't have to prove your client's innocence. You just have to
create doubt.
So
what they did to create even more doubt was that they stated that many of the prison guards in the prison in which Alan was being held were wearing Odinism patches on their uniform. One of the they name a sergeant named Sergeant Jones. They said he was wearing an Odin We Trust patch. And he also had a tattoo under his right eye that looked like an Odinism symbol.
Wait, a sheriff?
A sergeant.
Sergeant?
On the prison, like a prison guard.
A prison guard sergeant has a tattoo under his right eye.
That's what they said.
For a cult. Yeah, I wouldn't want to be in that prison.
I
mean, you don't want to be in prison either any way, but
right.
like I'm saying, like you don't want to be in a prison where the head officer has a tattoo of some. I don't give a fuck what the tattoo is of.
Right.
It could be a damn star, like it could be SpongeBob.
Right.
I don't want to be there.
So
what the hell?
That's what
weird.
They claim that they claim that as a defense for him. They claim that he didn't do it, that it was like a religious cult. In October 2023.
And this is before or after he confessed on the phone?
This is during. Because when around
it can't
the time,
be during. It could be around the same time.
So here's the thing. Around the time that he confessed on the phone, apparently he was found by the prison to be psychotic. And he was involuntarily injected.
Of course he's psychotic.
They said that he kind of like suffered of depression, paranoia, things like that, and they injected him. And they said that the first injection didn't work, so they gave him another one. And this was around the time that he confessed to his wife.
So they're saying that the injection is what caused him to make a quote unquote confession.
Not his defense isn't saying that, but they're kind of saying like, hey, he was involuntarily injected for being psychotic.
Okay. All right.
There's even more, but in October 2023, photos got leaked on the internet from one of the attorney's defense office. So I think it was Baldwin. Someone in his office took pictures of the crime scene and posted it on the internet. And the judge was pissed. The judge was like, what the, like this is horrible because the families are going to go on the internet and see this. Like they were able to take it down before it got like super viral, but this was a problem.
Yeah.
So it ended up, like I said, being that one of the people in the attorney's office leaked these photos. And the attorney, I believe it was, like I said, Baldwin, the attorney claimed that, hey, I'm just a victim of a scam. Like I didn't post those pictures. It wasn't me. But the judge didn't want to hear that. So the judge kind of like coerced them to quit, to kind of like get off the case. Then they got off the case. The judge appointed 2 new lawyers from, I guess, her town. Then the lawyers, Baldwin and Rosie, were kind of like upset that they kind of got bumped off the case like that. So they went to the Indiana Supreme Court. And they kind of said like, hey, like we got coerced into getting off the case. This is not correct because we didn't want to resign. Our client, they kind of like, gave reasonings. And the Indiana Supreme Court totally supported it. They were like, yeah, we understand. So they ruled that they were unfairly taken off the case and then became reinstated back into Allen's case. There's been a lot of like discourse between public defenders as to whether or not Allen did it. So this is kind of like where it starts to get muddy because the original public defenders were taken off the case. New ones were brought in. Then the old ones came back. So it makes sense to no one as to why that happened. And because of the fact that they were taken off, new ones came in, and then they came back on, other public defenders learned more about the case.
Oh.
So
now there's, instead of just 2 lawyers that know about it and we're trying to keep things on the hush,
right.
Now there's a bunch of people that know about it and it was leaked photos of the crime scene.
Right. So now there's like, that's why there's now a lot of public discourse between like the defenders as to whether or not he's really innocent, because a lot of like the proof that the jury has, not the defenders, what's the word?
The prosecutors.
Of course. A lot of the evidence that the prosecutors have, it's kind of not based on a lie, but kind of. It's kind of twisted up evidence because one of the public defenders that got named after Baldwin and Rosie got taken off the case, he said that the sketches of the suspect were hung up on the CVS where Allen worked. And no one approached Allen like, hey, that looks like you.
You wouldn't. You would go to the cops. Nobody is ever gonna. What the fuck? That doesn't even make any sense.
That was what he said. He said that he believed that if the community believed it was Alan or it looked like Alan, they would have told him. They would have brought it up to him like, hey, like that looks like you. Like, do you have any relatives that look like you? Or
I feel like that's bullshit.
Because I wouldn't. They also
I don't give a fuck if I'm sitting on the train and I'm reading a newspaper and the person right in front of me looks exactly like what's on the newspaper. I'm not going to tell him,
that's true.
Hey, you look like this guy, and turn it to hell no.
Yeah,
I'm going to note that to myself. If I really do think it looks like him, I'm going to find a way to call the cops, but still keep my eye on him. Yeah. That way I can tell the cops where he's at and the cops will go handle that.
Right. So he also believes that there's a slight chance that Alan might be innocent because the arrest for Alan was made 24 to 27 days before a new sheriff election. So it was kind of like that shady, like we're going to solve the case so that we're the heroes and we get reelected again.
Okay. So they feel like they just picked the closest fitting description person to it just so that they can make some political moves.
Yeah.
Make it look like they're actively doing something. Like, hey,
for the community.
I know that this thing happened while I was here.
Right.
But guess what? I'm just proving to you that I'm here to solve it.
Right.
Okay. That could be.
That's one of the reasons why they believe he's also innocent.
Yeah.
Another one is because, and the courts never revealed this, but eyewitness testimony descriptions of the suspect were far too different from the description of Alan. Remember, the original description was that the man was between 5'6" and 5'10".
Don't tell me Alan was like 6'3" or something.
Alan is 5'4".
But I meant to say this earlier. That's such a wide range of a description.
Yeah.
5'6" to 5'10" is a big range.
It's a huge range.
Like a lot of people don't deem it as a big range because they deem anything under 6 feet to be short, but not really in like actual science. It's not considered short, but like in social standards, people say that, they're considered, you're on the short because you're not tall. So you're not, or your average height or whatever.
Right.
But 5'4" is like for a male is really on the short. That's the short side.
That's the short side of a male.
So to say, hey, he's anywhere between being a little on the short side to being above medium, average size, that's a wide range.
Yeah. It's a
so
large
even
range.
if the person ended up being 5'4", I mean, you did give a wide range.
It is that is very true.
And now that I'm thinking about it, good thing, who was it? Libby's phone that recorded the Snapchats and recorded the
video. Yeah.
The video. Like, a lot of older generation people that are older than millennials always say, you guys are always on your phones. You guys are always, basically, you guys are always on your phones. But like without phones, in some of these cases, it would be completely cold.
Oh yeah,
because without the phone, you wouldn't have a description of the guy.
Right.
I mean, there's a chance that you would have because maybe people would have came forward. But the fact that we're 6 years in and we had that footage, and now we're getting kind of witness testimony, it just goes to prove that like without the phone, this case would probably be just another cold case.
Well, the case was also kind of gag ordered for a while. Until the trial in 2024. That's why all the evidence is coming out now and kind of showing out.
Kind of like that case that we did a little earlier today.
Yeah, where like everything was just quiet.
Okay.
One of the other reasons why people believe that he's innocent is that there was no electronic evidence linking him to the girls, meaning his phone did not ping or was not near the girls.
Whoa, his phone never pinged in the area of the park?
Around where even though he does state he was in the park, his phone never pings in that area, which is weird because he either left his phone at home or turned it off. Yeah,
you could also just turn your phone off.
Yeah. Lastly, there was no DNA evidence at the scene. So the bullet that they did recover, it had like a little bit of DNA evidence, but it was not enough to be able to match it or sample it to anybody. So there's no like DNA evidence as to it could have been him, or who knows, maybe he had help. Ron, the guy Ron, who they believed was guilty, was a suspect at first, was completely exonerated. In 2024, Richard Allen was found guilty on all counts related to the murders of Abby and Libby, based on his verbal confessions and the bullet that they found near the girl's body matching the gun at his house. He was sentenced to 130 years in prison, so 65 years for each. The trial revealed the details that we discussed that people had no idea about, and that evidence that linked him to the crime scene. Now, like I said before, a lot of people still believe that he's innocent.
Yeah,
that he had
what was the
nothing to do with
final
it.
nail in the coffin? Just the bullet and the gun?
The bullet, his physical description, him admitting that he admitted it multiple times.
Yeah.
Him admitting that he did it, and the bullet. That was the main pieces of evidence.
Because also you got to think, right? Because that neighbor that was acting very suspicious, he also had like 150 guns, right? And I'm not saying like clearly he obviously didn't have one gun that fit this description, which I'm surprised because
odds are if you have
that many guns, you would have that one because that's a pretty common one.
Right.
And like there's plenty of people that can own that gun that we could just say, hey, like the ammo for that is there, unless they were able to match like forensic bullet, like the scratches that's on the bullet to how it might have left his gun.
So
if they matched it like that, then that's different.
They were able to match how the bullet left the gun, but it did not make sense as to where the gun got like, not like where the gun shows evidence of the bullet leaving. It does not necessarily match where the bullet was at. So they believe that the gun, it was something about the gun was like hit or thumped into somewhere like further before, like at the beginning of the park, but then the bullet is found near their body. So a lot of people were like, that's weird because there's no...
Oh, like it got knocked loose, but then it didn't actually fall until...
Yeah, or like there's just some weird evidence, and there's like a lot of things that like, one, are not being investigated, but two, are kind of like being hidden from the public. So everyone's kind of like, what the hell? Like, is this guy really innocent? Like, are they really blaming him? And what makes it worse is that the fact that the first judge that signed off on him moving to another prison kind of like just bounced off the case. That's what's weirder. Because the judge did say, I feel bad doing this. Like, I don't want to see it or something like that.
Yeah, because it's not enough substantial concrete evidence, but it is the closest that they have.
Yeah.
And it seems like they're really just saying, hey, we're just going to go ahead and gung-ho prosecute this guy. And that's probably what he didn't feel comfortable with.
Yeah. Probably. Who knows? And like, we just don't know.
I hope it was him. That way, at least the right person.
At least the right person's in prison. But to this day, his wife believes that it's not him. Like, people believe that his confession was forced because he was kind of like named, like he was called psychotic and injected and all that stuff. Like people were like,
yeah. And I mean, look, I'm not one to take confessions 110% serious all the time.
Right.
But I do take confessions serious if you did it on your own volition, not around cops, to a loved one especially.
Right.
Because there's been plenty of instances where cops pull you into a room and into an interrogation room and then they get people to confess. Those I don't fully 110% believe.
Yeah.
Because there are psychological maneuvers that you could use against the person to get them to confess in the moment, and fear, adrenaline, all of that could play a factor. However, the fact that he admitted to doing this multiple times to loved ones, not in the presence of cops.
Right.
Not with anybody even bringing it up. It's not even like someone was questioning him. It doesn't sound like any of the family members were pressing on him saying, hey, did you do it? Did you do it? Did you do it?
Right.
In the moment, he just brought it up and say, hey, I have something to tell you. And they kind of probably knew where it was going and was like, that's why she asked him, are you sure you want to tell me on this call?
Yeah.
And he's like, yeah, I want to tell you because I'm probably going to be in here for the rest of my life. So I just want to get it off my chest. And that's when he said it.
That's when he said it.
That I believe. When it's like that, I believe it.
Because they also reviewed the footage of the interrogation that the police first did on him. And at first he was very like in denial, very calm. Like, you know, when people accuse you of something, but you didn't do it and you're upset. Like that's kind of like how he was acting. And then when the police officer started like yelling at him, he kind of was like, all right, like I'm done talking. Like you're clearly not going to believe what I said. Like that's kind of how he was acting. So a lot of people were like on the verge of like, did he do it? Did he not? But also like people are mourning the girl. So they're like, you probably did it. Like it's hard to kind of like gauge what to believe because there's so much like not concrete evidence aside from him confessing. Does that make sense?
Yeah. If there's one thing that
tough.
I'm learning while doing all of these episodes, it's more like not even from the victim side, right? Because there's obviously some lessons that we're learning from the side from the victims, and it's unfortunate because people should be able to go to a damn park and walk. Right. 2 girls should be able to walk in a park and not get murdered over that. Right. But like some of the things I'm learning, don't go on trails by yourself. Right. Like just because a neighborhood is quote unquote safe doesn't mean that it's safe. Just because something has never happened doesn't mean that it will happen.
That it won't happen.
Right. But from the side of the justice system, I'm starting to realize that like it's not as accurate as people like to make it seem like it is.
And it's not as fair
and
because
it's not as fair.
Things can be twisted.
Well, I've always known that it's not as fair.
Right.
I've always known that.
No, of course, but like things not just from the side that it's not fair, but from the side of things can be easily twisted and manipulated to make it look like you did do something.
And there's always doubt, even if somebody confesses.
Yeah.
But here's the thing. We'll look at another case in which somebody was in an interrogation room with no food, not being able to use the bathroom, no water for a whole day and a half, getting screamed at by officers. And then the officers tell them behind the scenes, hey, if you just say that you did it, we'll give you XYZ. And then that's proven. And the person confesses to a crime that they have no physical evidence to and spends their entire life in prison. But somebody that confesses it on their own volition to a family member, not in the presence of police officers, there's still doubt there.
Yeah.
It's
not just
weird.
that, but also like the footage, like I mentioned earlier, of the cops interrogating Alan. It shows like there's a part that's like redacted, which is really weird because, okay, so you'll see like the full confession video, right? From the point where they got him in, they interrogated him, they started yelling at him to the point where they told him that he was going to get arrested. There was a part where that was redacted, that was not shown to the public. And that's why people are even more skeptical.
You see all this redacted shit, half tapes and partial recordings. It's like, don't put it out to me if it's a partial. Just keep it to yourself until it cannot be a partial. Because a partial does not solve anything for me.
No, and it does not necessarily.
And it does not help in the court of public opinion. It feels like you're trying
to hide something.
Basically, you're trying to manipulate me as the court of public opinion.
You know what this entire case is giving? It's giving the judge and the police department knew who did it, and they knew it was like someone like a little bit higher up with like probably a little bit more power, and kind of were like, you know what, like, we'll pin it on this person. Oof. That's what it's giving.
That's a theory.
That's what it's giving. Because when we looked at the Mora murder case and we looked at one of the other cases, a lot of the police officers start Justice Department start to get really shady when it starts to come around them doing something and then trying to cover it up, but then still having to investigate a case. Like it gets
that is
really
true,
weird and
but
shady.
Also you got to think about the Long Island serial killer case that we didn't fully cover yet.
Right.
But like in that case, there was a cop that was acting pretty shady, and at one point people thought maybe he might be it because he fits a description, all this stuff. Then it turns out it's not him. He's just a shady motherfucker doing other shady shit.
That's true. That was it for the case. Thank you guys for listening. I hope you guys learned a bit, and let us know what you think of the case down below, because I really want to hear what other people think. Like, is the evidence adding up? Like, what doesn't make sense? Does it make sense to you? Other than that, thank you guys for listening. Please stay safe.
Be good.
Do good.
And be safe. Take care.
Bye.